And welcome to Not Technically Perfect with me, Richard Struther. Yeah, I am filming inside today because it is hotter than Hades out there. Actually, not so much that it's hot, but it's humid. Like, I've had the air conditioner running full bore all day, and it's still hot and sticky in here. It's insane. It's absolutely. Uh, the term I like to use is pants on head retarded, and yep, I'll stick with that. Pants on head retarded. It's yeah, sticky, very sticky. Um, yeah, I'm Jackbox event coming up. I don't think I'm going to do it tomorrow though. I haven't had a lot of kickback for that one. So I will probably wind up doing Jackbox once a month if it goes really well at once a month. Maybe we'll do once every couple of weeks. But that's a side note. Like I said, too hot to be outside. Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful out there, but well, beautiful looking, not to be out there. So presentation tips. Um, I keep looking. You know what? I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to do this at one point later this week, probably on the weekend actually. I ordered this back in June. I finally got it. This is something kind of unique. I'm going to compare this to a standard gimbal. This thing is a really neat device that tracks you when you put your phone in here and you put this on a tripod, and it actually tracks you as you move around. The difference is it's like, yes, Richard, but I can buy a gimbal that can do that. Yes, you can. The problem is the gimbal requires you to use their software, and their software isn't always that good, and it's easy to lose tracking. This one is, and I tested it earlier today when I got it. I tested it this morning. It's really impressive. Like it doesn't lose you. It's kind of freaky. It's really neat because then you can actually kind of move around and it follows you really well. So I'll talk more about that on the weekend. Today, look, we were talking about look, we had this amazing episode with Deb yesterday, um, talking about photos and kind of photo books and how to kind of make this project and make it work and all that. And let's be honest, once we jump into that, then we're kind of jumping into, like, we're talking about pages, then we're jumping into Keynote. Or you know what, it's not that far a stretch to jump into Keynote. And I want to talk about a few presentation tips that are really important. And I don't care if you're using, again, Canva is an option if you're working in a team or you're working collaboratively. So Canva is an option. I personally prefer Keynote. That's again, um, I prefer Keynote because I've been using Keynote for years and years, and it is a spectacular piece of software. And if you insist on using PowerPoint, that's fine too. This all of everything I'm going to talk about today applies to PowerPoint equally as Canva, as Keynote, as any of the presentation softwares, even if you're using Prezi, for example. So these are all things to consider. Prezi, by the way, being like Canva, an online, and it tends to use kind of machine learning kind of techniques to try and make your presentation pop more. So that kind of covers the software end of it. If you guys want to ask me about more, other software, different software, hey, I'm open. So doors always open. Love that. Let's talk because I'm always open to talk about software and stuff like that. Um, Tip number one, once upon a time, the computer screens were more square. They weren't quite square, but they were more square. They were the ratio was 4 wide by 3 high. So you had a much more um, kind of boxy format. Um, Almost everything nowadays, projectors, TVs, everything use the widescreen format, 16 by 9. So 16 wide by 9. So that's the ratio. So if you were to take whatever screen, and if it's a wider screen, you know what? Most people are still making presentations in 4 by 3. So you have these huge black bands on either side. Let's avoid that, shall we? When you're starting up your presentation, make sure you choose widescreen. It makes a difference and it looks a lot more professional. And what's nice is it gives you a lot more width to work with, especially when you're working with text. So that's a great. I mean, seems almost too simple, but it really is, but it's a great tip to kind of go with. Um, as I mentioned with the photo books, the same rules apply. This does not apply to the background. Oh, try to make sure your background is not, if you decide to put a background to your presentation, yes, have a logo, have a light image, but try to avoid something that's too busy, too contrasty. You can actually turn the contrast way down on your background so that anything that goes on top of it, it just gives a nice texture to the back. So that's, backgrounds are actually, you know what, I could almost do a whole episode just on background. Seriously, what makes a good background? And put that in the notes. That's something to think about. And with the photo books, odd number of elements, please. Even number of elements tends to make the eye compete for attention, or the elements compete for attention, whereas odd number of elements stand out. So whether it's, and bullet points, individual bullet points count as elements. You could theoretically have a good title and 4 bullet points, for example. And the other thing that I have to mention with the elements is please, 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 when you're giving a presentation, you are giving your presentation, your slides should be visual aids. They should accentuate the story. They should bring it out. They should tell you, they should show your audience. They should illustrate the points that you're conveying. Far too often we will see people presenting and their presenter's notes, like the slide is everything they're saying. That's a problem because your brain has only 2 centers for language. One, Wernicke's and Broca's. And Wernicke's is for the receiving of language and the interpretation of what it means. But the problem is if you're processing the visual language and the audio language, they, even if it's the same thing, your brain is not doing it at the same rate, so they conflict. Broca's is the conversion of thought to language, the words we choose to express. So the golden rule here with your visual aids is they must be glance worthy. And I'm gonna, goodness help me, but you know what? The best, if you want something, if you want to see what glance worthy really looks like, the best memes on the internet. I'm not kidding. It can be a terrible image, it can be a terrible joke, but the fact that the image and the text, one line will support, like will give the context for the image or give the image a different context, and all of a sudden, that's memorable. That plants in the head. That really kind of sticks with you. So make sure that if your slides are just something to glance at and illustrate, that they support what you're speaking, what you're saying. For your presenter's notes, there is actually an area in that for that, especially in Keynote and PowerPoint. You can actually open the presenter's notes, and for those of you who want to go into really pro tips, go ahead and ask me about using 2 monitors because it's really cool and it makes for a spectacular means of presentation. Glance-worthy also means that try to avoid using transitions unless those transitions support the argument. Like if you want to soft transition one point to the next, that's great. But soft transitions are important. Soft transitions aren't as important as making sure that the transition doesn't get in the way of that of your presentation unless it is an integral part of your presentation. So again, hit me up, ask me about this stuff. I love this stuff. And the last point I'm going to mention is the trick with all of these software. It doesn't matter which one you use. We hit on it with the photo books. I mentioned PDF. You can export your presentations in PDF, which means that they can be seen or projected from any computer, or they can be used on any computer, any mobile device, and even from those devices put up on a screen, and with the original visual intent. So that's really important to think about. You can also export the, if you need to, always export your presentation in something that's not to be shown from your computer, but from another computer. And I would recommend either PDF or images, just because I will always present from my computer when possible, but occasionally circumstances are such that. circumstances are such that it's not possible. If something happens, there's a technical issue, what have you, you have to use somebody else's computer or whatever. Always have something that you can just kind of pull off onto a USB key or whatever and put it on somebody else's machine, or even just email out super fast. It's just a great pro tip. But if you can present on your computer, then yes, by all means. You just don't want to be caught where somebody goes, oh, well, I don't have that software, or I don't really use that. Or you can, even if this is something that really does require the animation and transitions, because there are points where the animation can really kind of convey the point nicely, then by all means export it as a movie, or even export each slide as its own movie. Well, there's different ways of going about it. There are movies with pauses in it. For example, QuickTime allows for that. So that's really neat, is the movie will go until at a certain point, it will pause when the slideshow would pause, and then you can press whatever button to move on, like to transition to play the movie until the next pause point. That's actually really easy to do. So again, if you guys want to know more about this, hit me up. I hope you found these tips helpful. And I know I went rather quickly. If you guys want to give this another view through, if you guys want to hit me up with questions or comments, these are just a few kind of pro tips, and we could even talk about it more tomorrow. If any of you want to actually come live on the show, I will invite you as a guest gladly, and we can actually talk through the finer points of these great presentation tips. Because I really enjoy doing something a little more live instead of just talking to a camera. So guys, thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow live at 6:45. We're gonna have some fun, as always. Have a great evening. I'll see you tomorrow.